How many of you have or still do work with victims of crime face to face? So if you put your hand up if you're maybe a victim support worker, police officer, maybe a prosecutor. So I see quite a few people there. So how many of you, when you're working with victims, have any difficulties communicating with them, difficulties getting them to explain their situation, maybe helping them explain what's happening? How many of you have had that kind of difficulty? Any arms? You can raise your arm if you had that. We still have a few, otherwise I'll be in trouble. So what I want to do is just tell you a story about Zoe, and maybe open your eyes up a little bit to some better ways of working with the most vulnerable victims in criminal proceedings. And Zoe was just 5 years old when her father started abusing her, and she didn't really know what was happening. What she knew was she didn't like it, and as the years went on, things got worse and worse, and she started pushing back. She became more and more frightened and upset by what was happening. Her father started telling her, and continuing to tell her it was normal, and then he started to tell her that this would break up the family and it would be all her fault. And eventually, as she still tried to escape what he was doing, he told her that he killed her mother. And at some point, this became so terrible for her that she broke down in front of her mother and told her what was happening, told her everything. And everything that had happened to her, and even the telling of the story to her mother, wasn't as bad as what she knew she had to do next, which was utterly terrifying. She knew she had to go to the police station. She knew that she had to speak to this strange officer and tell them exactly what had happened. And the day that she went to that station, she was shaking uncontrollably, she was crying. It took her maybe an hour to even enter the police room. And as she was walking to the interview room, her heart was racing, her breath was coming in short gasps. She felt like she was about to faint, she was pale. And all that kept coming up were images of what had happened to her in the past. And she sat in the interview room, and the police officer, who was accompanied with an assistant, started asking her questions. She just couldn't answer anything. She was just too upset, crying uncontrollably. And so the police officer said to take a break. They went out. And maybe 30 minutes later, the door opened and Zoe looked up, and what she saw was this beautiful golden retriever, a dog called Gigi, who tentatively walked into the room and got closer to Zoe, and they started to interact, and Zoe started to stroke her soft ears. And as Gigi pressed against her, Zoe could feel the slow heartbeat of Gigi, and as she felt that, her heartbeat started to slow. And as Gigi pressed up against her, she felt her warmth, and she felt herself starting to calm down. And she kept focused on Gigi. Even as the police officer started to ask her questions, she remained focused on Gigi, but she could actually start to answer the questions. As terrible as it all was, she could start to talk about what had happened. And what she found amazingly was that every time she started to get upset, every time she choked up or stopped, Gigi pressed closer. She put her paw on, or her head on Zoe's lap, or maybe a paw. And slowly she calmed down and was able to continue the interview. Until at the end, she'd managed to tell her terrible story. And as she looked up, she saw also that even the police officer and her mother were looking calmer. And her mother commented afterwards when they'd left the police station, the only thing that Zoe talked about from that interview was Gigi. She even remembered as Gigi fell asleep and she was snoring and laughing about that. And that's what she remembered from the interview. What was important for Zoe was that this wasn't just in the police station, it was also in the courtroom. And she knew, and she was grateful for the fact that Gigi would be there with her. And it wasn't absolutely certain that that would be the case, because the judge had initially refused. The defense lawyer, her father's defense lawyer, had come up with every reason why Gigi shouldn't be present. There would be allergies, the dog would bark, people would be frightened, it would disrupt the courtroom, it would be against defense rights. Fortunately, Gigi's owner was prepared and had the answers. Gigi was specially bred. Gigi was handpicked, trained for 2 years with her handler, They knew everything about how to make sure that Gigi was a facility dog that would not disrupt, that would not endanger the rights of the fair trial. Even in the courtroom when she entered, and as Zoe walked in holding Gigi's leash, there was a place for Gigi hidden from view. And as she was answering those questions, and again she started to stumble with her words, she was able to feel Gigi press against her, and she held hold of that leash, feeling in control, feeling empowered. So I have a confession to make. This story isn't a real story. Gigi and Zoe aren't real, but their stories are real. They're taken from real victims, they're taken from real police officers, they're taken from real dogs who have been trained over in America, but also through Victim Sports Europe's FYDO project. We've been working for the last 2 years, and with our partner organisations in Belgium, in Italy, and in France, we've now trained 6 dogs working in victim support services, working in the police, working with prosecutors in the courtrooms to help the most vulnerable of victims. And as part of that project, we're also developing the rules and the guidelines to make sure that these dogs are accepted and well received, that they are not disruptive. And we're also developing the research and the evidence. The research is there, by the way, already, and we're developing it further. That research does show that human beings have a physiological reaction to the presence of dogs. That means our heart rates go down. It means that serotonin is released. Victims feel reassured, less isolated, and they are better able to communicate. Fundamentally, what we have with their presence is the reduction of the trauma of victims and the increase in their ability to give best evidence. So sadly, FYDO is coming to an end this year. We have the final conference in Brussels on the 18th of October. I really hope that some of you will be able to attend that. If you want to know more, please speak to me or one of the VSE team afterwards. And the question is, what do we do next? Well, as I like to say, FYDO dogs are not just for FYDO, but for life. This is an initiative. It's a vision. We want to see these dogs in every country in Europe and beyond. And so really the question, and I'll finish with 2 questions, I guess, to all of you as well. You can say yes or no. The first question is, do you think that victims should be traumatized in the criminal justice system? Or do you think that victims should be stopped from reporting or from giving their evidence in court? So if you've said no, then the question is, what is stopping you from making these facility dogs exist in your country? What's stopping you from taking that one decision to come to a conference, to speak to us, and find out how you can be the person that introduces facility dogs in your countries? It's just one decision away. Thank you.